Eskom is now faced with closing a 250 billion rand gap after energy regulator Nersa granted the power utility a lower than requested tariff increase. Nersa has justified its approval of a 12.7% hike by saying consumers and businesses' affordability concerns were taken into consideration. Eskom had applied for a 65% increase. Board chairperson Teto Nyati shares the state-owned entity's reaction and plans to stay afloat.
On the Nersa, we have accepted as Eskom the reality. This is the reality that we've got. We are disappointed, of course, but this is our new reality. Like all businesses, we are business leaders, we're business people. We need to now be able to live within this new reality. So our drive now is we have to continue to be profitable and sustainable within this new reality. That may change some of the actions that we are doing internally in order for us to achieve that objective. But internally, the leadership team is clear. The focus now is let's continue to drive this business. As you have seen with regards to the first 6 months of this year, we have been able to be profitable. We need to continue along those lines as we go forward. Again, going to the Jet IP discussion, we cannot, in our view as the board, we don't want to, if we do not need to go and borrow, we should not be borrowing. You know? And no matter how much stuff that is available out there, we are in a strong position right now, largely at the back of the work that has been done by the generation team to improve the operational performance of this company.
We extend the discussion around Eskom's performance and operations now with Brian Kamanzi, who is a researcher at the Trade Unions for Energy Democracy. Brian, thank you so much for your time. Let's first unpack Eskom's long-term financial sustainability. As we heard from Mr. Nyati there, that there have been some improvements.
Yes, they have. I think that the testament, if you spoke to most South Africans over 300 days ago, whether we'd be at almost a year without load shedding, people would say that you're crazy. So I think that element is self-evident. There have been significant improvements to Eskom's performance in terms of the coal plants, the generation fleet, and we also have seen mostly from the private sector, as a result of legislation that's been introduced, new renewable energy projects that have come online, and both together, in combination with low demand, which has come as a consequence of low economic growth in the country, we have had low to no load shedding over the last year.
The load shedding is one matter. Now that it has returned, we don't know for how long. We cross fingers that it's not for an elongated period. But how then should Eskom address the shortfall created by Nersa's decision to approve this lower than requested tariff increase?
Okay, so we've got to remember, I mean, there's a couple of things. I think first, we've been operating on the margins for some time. So at least from Eskom's perspective and from its technical outlook, nothing has really changed. There's always a probability that trips happen, and unfortunately, we're in one of those negative scenarios. From the financial standpoint, we have to remember that we've got 3 levers here for revenue for the electricity sector. We have tariffs, we have tax, we have tariffs and we have tax that we can leverage from to gain revenue into the sector. And at the moment, if the tariffs are lower than what was expected, then unfortunately government is going to have to step in and provide some support. Eskom can also look at other mechanisms to raise funding, but tariffs and tax are really the 2 main levers. So if Eskom applied for 36 and there's now a shortfall in what is required, government will need to step in unless we allow Eskom to run as it has been running as an underfunded entity, which will result in poor performance over time.
And that speaks directly to the careful balance that is required then between operations and financial priorities. What should be top on the agenda for Eskom given their current status?
It's the perspective of many progressive sections of the trade union movement in South Africa, COSATU, SAFTU, and others, that electricity is a public good, and our organization is a supporter of that view. So from that perspective, the universal delivery of electricity to residents and also the downstream benefits to commercial industrial enterprises is key and critical. But that, we need electricity now as a part of modern life. It has become integrated into some of our basic needs for society. So I think that is highest priority. And in a country with such high levels of unemployment, slow economic growth, and with our the current profile of our society, we cannot afford significant 40% increases. So it really does imply that we need a blended strategy that also looks at tax policy and that looks at tax appropriations to support the electricity prices and to ensure that electricity prices stay low. That's nothing new in the world. There are many highly regulated electricity markets. But it does question the reform path that South Africa has undertaken to unbundle Eskom and to liberalize the electricity tariffs, because, to be honest, that's moving in the opposite direction. So if it's evident that South Africans cannot afford to pay high prices of electricity, then in my opinion, it's quite obvious that the reform path that has been chosen to privatize the electricity sector will simply not work.
Brian, the latter part also brings my mind to questions around the budget for 2025. We are expecting that from the Finance Minister in February. How should it speak to Eskom's double whammy of challenges then?
I think we can expect that some amendments to the Eskom debt relief package will be applied because, as I mentioned, I think it's broadly acknowledged that a 40% increase cannot be carried by the population. So government will have to step in. To what extent will be the question. The other big question here is about the municipal arrears. We have a problem where many municipalities have not been paying their bills to Eskom. The situation has gotten worse, especially for highly financially constrained municipalities. And there are severe questions that need to be raised here about the funding models themselves for municipalities, how they raise revenues from the rates collections from water, electricity, waste collection, and other services. If you have high levels of unemployment, declining levels of industrialization, that reduces the base of rates that can be paid. So you have to then also look at how municipalities themselves are funded. How are they made financially viable so that we can also clear our municipal arrears? So it's an integrated problem which requires an integrated financial solution. And, it's systemic. It's not only an Eskom issue. It's a society-wide problem.
Thank you so much for your input. That is Brian Kamanzi from the Trade Unions for Energy Democracy talking us through the latest developments surrounding Eskom.